I got something to say, got something to say.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Conversations podcast, where we have Brother Abdul Rashid and then myself, Rashid. So we got the Rashid brothers kicking it off tonight. How you doing, brother?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing well, my brother. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
MashaAllah, doing pretty good. It was a good day. So the weather's getting cooler out here in Sacramento. So
yes, it's getting cold here in New York as well. Probably a lot colder than California. Tonight we're going to kick off our first episode of our Conversations podcast. Tonight we want to talk a little about, the elephant in the room, which is the tragedy that's going on in Palestine, specifically the Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. And we're now a little over a month into the siege by Israel. And it's devastating. I mean, I think we're now at over 10,000 deaths and Palestinians. And I think out of those 10,000, 4,500 have been kids. So it is really, really devastating. And it's just sad. Like, what happened on October 7th was a tragedy. And it was uncalled for, and I don't think anybody condones what Hamas did. But I think the problem I'm having is that the Israeli response has been way over the top and way extreme. Mm-hmm. I don't think they've stopped bombing the Gaza Strip since they started. So we're talking about over 30 days, close to 30 days of continuous bombing. And at this rate, without a ceasefire, what is going to be left of what we call Gaza now?
Right, and they just started the ground game recently, so that means they're going door to door, and God only knows what's happening there.
Right. So and so for me, this didn't start on October 8th, right? This has been going on for over 75 years with the Nakba and the creation of the state of Israel. Right. And so every time there's a war, history shows us that Israel takes a little bit more of the land. And every time there's the war, they take a little bit more, to the point where, the state of Israel or the territory of Israel is divided. It's, you got the West Bank in the north, and then you got the smaller Gaza Strip in the south. Mm-hmm. And then you have the occupied territories of mm-hmm. Jerusalem, West Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. I think it's West Jerusalem. Right. So it's devastating. So, and what really saddens me is the loss of innocent life, the kids. Mm-hmm. You can turn on any TV station that's being truthful, and they will show you the devastation of the kids. And so how is this going to end, and how are these people supposed to survive? And if the Israelis don't stop soon, which everybody's asked them to stop. I mean, the UN has asked them to stop. Everybody's asked them to stop.
Especially if we read between the lines, because people are saying things. Other governments are starting to say things.
And
between the lines, they know some of these things are atrocities and genocide.
Right, and it's not me saying this. This is the international organizations, humanitarian organizations have been saying even before October 7th, 8th, that what was going on in the Gaza Strip, it was like an open air prison. This is not me. This is not my words. This is what they refer to it. Even Nelson Mandela said what's going on in Palestine is worse than the apartheid that was going on in South Africa. And that's mind blowing. Like, how could that be, right?
Right.
And of course, I've watched video clips, quotes from Malcolm X going back to the 60s, and he was saying the same thing. So,
it's been for decades.
Right. So this has been going on for way too long.
Hundreds.
And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I don't know if it's a 1 state, 2 state, 3 state. I don't know what it is, but I know right now, today, we need to stop the killing of the innocents of the Palestinian people, because it's genocide. You're trying to wipe them off the face of the planet, or push them off whatever little bit of land they had left.
Right.
And that's just not right. and it's just not fair. And the world's watching. The world is really watching. I don't know if you noticed that today was blackout day. People were encouraged not to spend.
Yeah, don't go buy anything.
Don't go buy anything. And I don't know how successful it was or not. I know I had to do some stuff that I had to do, and
right.
Because I think my car fixed or whatever today. But nevertheless, and here in New York, I'm pretty sure in California, and even in Sacramento specifically, we've been constantly. There's been almost like daily protests asking for the Palestinians to stop and asking for the U.S. government to put more pressure on the Palestinians, since we're like their biggest donor of weapons and money. But it's to the point now, like the president of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he feels so beholden that he's taking our money and not listening to anything we say. Right? He's not listening. He's not listening.
He's doing what he wants to do.
What I say,
right?
Yeah. Right, and when in the world has that ever happened where the United States has been a financial backer of a country and they didn't listen to them at least a little bit. So it's a quagmire. But the biggest thing is it's devastating, and I just don't know when it's going to end, and it's just sad. And the reality is, if they don't stop, and even when they do stop, all they're doing is producing the so-called terrorists of tomorrow. Because these kids who are growing up without parents, they're going to remember this,
right?
And when they get to be adults, they're gonna be susceptible to joining quote unquote terrorist organizations that are going to want to do harm to the Israeli people because the harm was done to them, right?
And their elders and the people in their community and the folks that they're around are going to remind them of this. And this is going to be in their brain when it turns 14, 15, 16. This is a long-term issue. And I think one of the points that's concerning for me is I keep hearing on the news like how this started on October 7th. This started on October 7th. Hamas started the war. And I'm not supporting Hamas. I feel I have to say that for me. This isn't an anti-Semitic thing. This just means I'm not happy with the policy of a government. I'm not happy with the policy of a government. It doesn't mean that I hate that religion or anything of that nature. So I just kind of want to say that for myself. But this thing has been going back way before October 7th. So when I hear in the news that, hey, they started this war on the 17th, on the 7th, they killed thousands of people, so therefore we need to bomb the daylights out of them. SubhanAllah, that is such a big and a huge lie. And right now there's drone shots on TV that you can see where buildings are just flat decimated. Cities are just rubble. There's nothing, absolutely nothing there. And like you're saying, what's being brewed out there? What are these children going to be like when they turn into teenagers and whatnot? This is not good. This is not good.
No, it's not. And like you said, it's been said before, this is collective punishment, which I heard or read that it was, it's against UN law, against international law for them to collectively punish the entire country for the actions of a small few, the small few being Hamas. And I understand the news says that they want to eradicate Hamas, but the thing is, you can't kill an idea. Hamas is not just a group of people. Hamas is an idea that they can almost say they gave birth to, right? They created, So it's not killing every member of Hamas, if that were possible, it's not gonna make Israel safer. Right. I think at the end of the day, they're just gonna be more in danger. They're never gonna feel a peace.
Right.
And it's funny because I was watching a video of Mufti Mink. It was a short video, and he was talking about the history of Israel, and he basically said, they're never going to be safe. They're never going to be safe. They're in a land, that people were there before they got there. They're surrounded by people who are who are hostile to them. And so they're never going. So they say they want peace, but they're never going to be able to achieve a peace because it's not a peaceful situation, and it didn't start in peace. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't know. Like I don't know what the end game is. I mean, I know what they say their end game is, but even when there's a ceasefire, or even when it stops, like we said, like we know the proper conversation we had earlier, like, who's going to go back in there and rebuild?
Right.
Who's going to
And
help
this,
them get back on their feet?
no, you're right. And this to I see this as a new way, or almost like gentrification. Because when I was looking at those drone shots of the city and looking at all the rubble, I started to think about, okay, who's going to rebuild this? And I guarantee folks out there that contracts are being drafted, signed right now, where new infrastructure is going to be coming in, whether that's electricity or plumbing, whatnot. Buildings are going to go up, and then who is going to be moving into those new establishments and who's not going to be moving into those establishments. And I'm sure a little piece is going to be given, a little bone, a little piece of cake to try to make people feel okay and comfortable. But at the end of the day, Palestinians are going to be, and Allah knows best. I'm just guessing, but I think Palestinians are going to be gentrified. They're going to be moved out. A lot of these places are going to be too expensive for them, and there's going to be a whole other issue that's going to be popping off.
Right. And as we heard earlier today, that the Israelis are going to stay there in Gaza, I guess, almost indefinitely. They're always going to, they're going to be there. So they're going to have control of the Gaza Strip internally and externally. And what's that going to look like for the Palestinians?
Right. How is that going to flow?
Yeah, how's that going to work for them? So once again, it's never going to be peaceful.
Right.
And
the thing, they can always use that argument of I don't feel safe. It's the same argument that police here use when they get in a situation to kill Black folks and just shoot them. Well, I didn't feel safe. My safety was compromised. That is the exact same argument that folks are using that are going into Gaza and doing their thing. And like you said, they're never, ever, ever going to feel safe. There's never going to be a situation where they feel 100% safe. So
right. And we've heard this a million times since this thing started. Mm-hmm. Israel has a right to defend itself.
Absolutely.
And I'm not arguing with that, but my thing is when do you exceed your defense and become a bully or offensive, or in this case, killing the perpetrator of killing hundreds of thousands.
Bully is a good word.
Thousands of innocent people, So, and like you also said, and we've seen this not to this extent, but this is basically what happened to the Native Americans here in the United States, right? We went to war with them and stole their land and pushed them onto reservations, right?
Right.
And so we as Americans are living on occupied territory. This is not our land, right?
Right.
So, and only thing is, the world wasn't really watching back then, but hopefully, thankfully for the Palestinians, the world is watching. I mean, as we've seen, there's been protests around the world. I was just watching this past weekend. They were Indonesia, England, Ireland, Brazil. So the world is watching, and the world is not happy. And I'm trying to commit to the boycott as best I can, which is killing me because I have an addiction to iced coffee from a certain establishment, but I want to mention its name. Right. But so now I got to find some other options. But it's not about me. But nevertheless, the constant devastation. But I know not the only thing, but the good thing I've taken away from this is that as Muslims we believe that these are the martyrs. The ones who die in this conflict are the martyrs. So being a martyr, you get you get the entrance into Jannah, and hopefully the highest level of Jannah Firdaus as being a martyr.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and the resilience of the people. I mean, when I watch the videos or watch the news, when they're pulling the dead bodies out of the rubble, there's not a whole lot of screaming and hollering. What you see is a lot of people praying, making dhikr, and just praising Allah in the most craziest of situation you can think of. I mean, people losing their whole entire families, and they still come out and they're like, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. And what I'm seeing a lot online and on Instagram and on social media is you're seeing non-Muslims see that and being drawn to trying to read the Quran or being drawn to Islam and converting. So I think, we're going to see as we've seen a whole lot of new shahadas and a whole lot of people coming and reading the Quran and being awoken to the beauty of this religion. So I think that's one of the pluses to come out of this devastation.
And I totally agree with you. And this to me is a form of a test. Those individuals that are there, how are they going to respond to it? For those who are in other countries, such as ourselves, how are we going to respond to it? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that if we see something we don't like, we can hate it with our mouth, with our hands, or with our hearts. So at minimum, we should try to stay within those three realms. And I try to lean heavy into that to try to keep that deen and to keep Allah in first and foremost in my mind. And I think that one thing that's really kind of spooky right now is there's now been a big effort and a big push, not only to cut off the electricity in Gaza, but the internet. So people cannot use their cell phones, because that's the thing. That's what separates now versus something like like we were talking before about the Native Americans. We have cell phones now. We can see things. So if they do not have internet access, we can't see real-time photos of things that are actually going on, where bodies, women and children are being pulled out, put out of this rubble. And I think this is a way for Israeli just to sort of cut everything off so that people can't see the atrocities that's going on. And it's interesting also to me that we can support, let's say, Ukraine against Russia and say that Russia is doing this, that, and the other. But at the same time, Israel is kind of doing the same thing. And why
if not worse,
if not worse, and we're not getting involved, and that's just not good. And the future of all of this is not looking promising. Like we talked before, what kind of individuals are being created out there? There may be families who really had no dislike for anybody, none. But then all of a sudden they're watching cartoons in the morning, and then a bomb goes off on their building and a whole family is dead. So the cousin who's related to them, what's he going to be feeling?
Right,
what are the kids of that going to be feeling? And we've taken out hospitals and other things. So we're kind of eliminating their ability to even
live
well.
Yeah, I know it's and they're going to be so far behind. I mean, they're going to be perpetual third world country for the near future.
Mm-hmm.
That's if they can get somebody, if they can get somebody to go in and help them rebuild. And they're gonna have to get loans from the World Bank and the United States and all those other countries to help them rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just but the thing is, the Israelis will control. They'll still be in control. They'll be in control of that.
They'll still be in control.
They will be able to determine who goes in, who goes out,
right,
how much aid gets in, how much this, and so they're all. So it's. And so, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll leave that to the politicians to figure out. Like I said, to start, I just want this to stop. The bombing, the ground war to stop. It's overkill. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not right. It's just not right. And like I said, the rest of the world is watching. I mean, and another thing that bothered me this week is the House of Representatives censuring U.S. Representative Rashida Tlaib from Michigan for using the phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free." I think that's the full phrase, which I've heard before, years before. I've heard that for years. I've heard that before, but I never knew it was like saying the N-word, where you can be censured or you would be accused of being an anti-Semite, even though in her speech on the House floor, she made it clear that that's not what she meant. She wants everybody to be free, Palestinians and Israelis.
Right.
And so they even brought this to a vote. And then two, I'm really mad about these 22 Democratic traitors who co-signed the bill to censure her. I'm like, who are you and where you and why? Who are you and why? Like,
and if we follow the money, and this, I don't know, it just digs so deep very deep into my point about the anti-Semitic thing, and I have to speak and touch on that. It's, if a person has a problem with a governmental policy, so if I look at Argentina, whatever, and I don't like their policy. If I look at the Catholic Church and they do something that I don't necessarily care for, if I speak against it, it's okay. People kind of get over that. But if I say anything against the Israeli government or what the Israeli policies are, just like Rashida Tlaib, you get branded as an anti-Semite. And that to me is extreme. So basically what they're saying is shut up. Don't say anything. We're in power. We're in control. We're going to do what we want to do. And if you don't like it, don't speak to it. Do not speak to power on this, because I will brand you as an anti-Semite, then run with it. Then run with that. And that's exactly what Rashida Tlaib is.
Right. And it's happening. It's happening crazy here in this country, especially on the college campuses. I can't remember the young lady's name, but she was at NYU, I believe she's at NYU, and she spoke out, sent a letter to whoever, voicing her support for the Palestinians and asking that the Israeli government stop. And she lost her prospective job, and they removed her from the student body. I'm like, really? So I'm like, alhamdulillah. I thought this was a country where free speech was okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's clearly not. And I was watching a Republican debate today, a recorded version of that, because I just wanted to endure the pain and watch that. And I was shocked, but partially not, that some of the people up on stage were saying, if a college I think the word was Tim Scott, I believe, said something to the effect of, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. And so what he was basically saying is, if you are a college campus and if you have any protests that are going on, then we, from a federal standpoint, can cut your funding.
Wow.
We can literally cut your funding. That is deep. Now, these students
censorship.
are out there.
That's censorship.
To the T. So that's saying, shut up, be quiet. Censorship all over the place. And that's really sad, because the college campuses is where we're supposed to, at least back in the 60s and 70s. I grew up in San Francisco near Berkeley, so I've grown up seeing a lot of these protests and all that. These are the kinds of things we encourage the youth to do, is to speak out against various things. And it's absolutely, or should not be, any problem with that. So the fact that someone, more than one person on stage, supported that point of just federal cutting the funds from a federal standpoint to those college campuses that allow these protests to happen. And again, these students aren't saying go bomb, go kill, go bomb, go kill. The media and other folks want to say that that's what the folks are saying. But if you look at them and look at their signs and you listen to what they're chanting, that's not what they're saying. They don't want people to be killed like that, like what Hamas did. They're not in supporting that at all. But
and
that's not what people want to put out there.
And I know I haven't heard anybody yet who was supporting Hamas.
Right,
and what they did.
Right.
And those people who are supporting it, obviously, they have a couple of screws loose. But it's funny, because when I was in college, I was active in student government and clubs and organizations, and we invited the Nation of Islam to the campus to talk, because I was, before I became a Muslim, but I'm dating myself though. This is just prior to the Malcolm X movie coming out.
Okay.
And they were getting ready, starting the planning for the March on Washington, Main Man March, whatever. Anyway, nevertheless, students, we came with the idea like, yo, let's invite them out here and let's hear them talk. And we did. I mean,
right.
And we invited lots of people to come out there. I mean, Julian Bond came out to speak to us. The Nation of Islam. We had some hardcore Rastafarians come out, to learn. And of course, and we had debates and all sort of kind of things. But that's where you learn this stuff in college, and we were free to invite whomever we wanted, as long as it wasn't, we weren't. I mean, I guess even back then you could have invited the Klan to your campus, and I'm sure back in the day there was some Klan activity. on some campus because the schools or colleges are where free speech lived, right? And that's when you
Right.
learned, and
Yeah.
you shaped your own ideology by listening to these people or not listening to them. And so, yeah, I think whatever Tim Scott said about defunding college campuses that don't agree with you, it's a slippery slope, and I'm ashamed that he said that.
Yeah, it's a backward idea. I mean, like you're talking about college campuses. We had Stokely Carmichael come out, and at that particular time, I'll date myself. This was like in the early '80s, and this was a highly controversial thing. I mean, the media came out, and I was like, "Subhanallah!" Wow, I didn't expect all this, but they allowed it to happen. You know what I mean? The university wasn't happy about it, but they allowed it to happen. And I know recently, with all the statues coming down and all that other things, there was an issue at a university where they gave permits to a student club to bring a high member of the KKK to come out. And and to be honest, I supported the idea of approving those permits because it is free speech. It is free speech. Although I'm totally against it. That's not something that I would ever even think of supporting. But it's free speech. But as long as a person is not out there inciting an insurrection, or inciting violence, or inciting hurting and killing, it's okay. It's a very, very, like you said, it's a very slippery slope. But if we're going to start cutting off federal funds to universities, that's a scary thing.
Right, I'm with you. I mean, let them come. I wouldn't co-sign it, but let them come so I can come protest. You know what I'm saying?
Right, you're right, exactly. I'll be on the other side of the fence,
Yeah,
with that big
exactly.
sign talking about go home. I'll be
And
I'll be that guy.
and it's funny that we were talking about going to colleges. So we actually had Dr. Leonard Jeffries come out, who is Hakeem Jeffries' uncle, who is the minority leader of the U.S.
Okay.
House Representatives. And of course, I don't know if you remember the controversy with Dr. Jeffries was because he was part of that era of starting Black Studies movement, and he did that. He led that here in New York, and of course, he talked about I can't remember what college he went to. But he joined. He used to tell us story all the time that when he was in college, he joined a fraternity, and it was a Jewish fraternity, and he became president of the Jewish fraternity.
Okay.
And he had a certain title, and it was like in Hebrew or whatever. But when you translated it, he was king of the Jews. So he said, like for a year,
okay,
he was the president of his fraternity, and so he was king of the Jews. And it's funny now.
Yeah.
And it was just a point he wanted to make that about his history. But anyway, so yeah, and how he wasn't anti-Semitic, how he was a friend of the Jews.
Right.
So yeah,
so what do you think we should do now? I mean, I'm sure there's some folks out there listening who may be a little bit confused. Wow, should I go out and do something? Should I, okay, my tongue, my hand, my heart, I get it. I need to hate this on that level. But if anybody wanted to take some action or even pray or make dua, what would be your advice? And maybe we can conclude with that.
Yes. Okay. So cool. So we'll go back to the hadith. Well, the hadith is: if you see a wrong, change it with your hands. If you can't change it with your hands, change it with your voice. Right. And if you can't change it with your voice, then hate it in your heart, and that's the weakest level of faith. So that's what I would tell people to do. So I don't mean actually go fighting anybody, but you can use your hands now and make contributions to organizations that are going to help give aid to the Palestinians, sharing posts and tweets in support of. That's using your hands. Word of mouth, talking to people word of mouth, talking about it in all your friend circles,
right.
And of course hitting it in your heart, but supporting the boycotts. If there's going to be a rally or a protest in the area, go to the rally or protest. But I think the most important thing you can do is to find someone, some like-minded people, so you can talk about it. Because I know for me, the first week I did like, who do I talk to?
Right.
because I was so conflicted and I was almost depressed, I guess, seeing this on television, unfold on television and online. So yes, I think, talk about it.
Right.
Contribute money, time, effort, send text, forward post, any of that stuff. And of course, join the boycott, McDonald's, uh, KFC, Dunkin' Donut, Starbucks.
Mm.
I think these things, they may seem like they seem like small things, but if a large group of people do it, it makes a difference. And most of these corporations and even the government, they only respond. So if they start losing enough money, they'll respond to the cause in a way that we deem positive and fit. So that's
Right.
what I would suggest.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, and to lean into that hadith, about hitting with our tongue and our hands and our heart. When I think about the tongue part, it's all about dua. Pray for those families over there. I'll use the old number 45 word and say on both sides. Pray for those oppressor and pray for those that are oppressed. And that's a good way to handle it with your tongue. And also, like Brother Abdul Rashid said, I think that's a really, really good idea about talking about it, because talk therapy is good. I know that personally, that's helped me, even doing this tonight, just to talk it out and get it off my chest. So I don't feel that I'm going to explode, because to an extent, I'm a news junkie, right? I watch CNN and MSNBC, and I'll turn to other channels and get an idea what they're saying. And sometimes you start to ingest all that stuff. And so sometimes you got to release and just let it out. So find a comfortable space where you can talk to people. And if you at the water cooler at work or Walmart, whatever you are, if you're out and about and a conversation pops up about this, don't always just be afraid and just stay quiet. You can softly voice your support so that people understand what's going on the other side, especially when you start saying things like, hey, I'm a Muslim and I know people that go to my masjid who are from that area, and these are the things that they're dealing with, and you sort of humanize it as you're talking to other people. So that too is very important. And like Brother Abdul Rashid said, I think supporting those different protests and rallies that are going on out there are good and healthy, but just make sure that the message coming out of those rallies are healthy and they stay within the deen of Islam, because sometimes people fall into some things or events that they really did not intend to be at, because it may go a certain direction. So just be very careful about the different organizations that you support and that you're with, and just think it through.
Absolutely.
And I always talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'd like to conclude there. And Brother Abdul Rashid, you got some things you want to say to our peoples?
So yes, so this is our first episode of our podcast, conversation. So please give us a like, subscribe, and drop us an email, or let us know what you think. So we'll know what the people are looking for, what the people want to hear. We'd appreciate that. And keep on the lookout for our next episode in the near future. And so before we leave, subhanaka wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, my brother and friends. See you next time.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, good. See you soon, inshallah.